So, the first thing I like to do, Tom, is start with introductions. So why
Okay.
don't you start first, and then I'll proceed after.
So you want me to introduce you, or you?
No, I want you to introduce
You
yourself.
want me to introduce me? Okay.
Yeah.
So hi, I'm Tom Clancy. I'm from Valiant Technology. We are a outsourced IT department for the creative industry here in the New York City market. My company is about 30 engineers. We support about 60, 70 customers here in the city that are all in the advertising, fashion design, architecture, TV production space. Like, those are our customers. Our customers' offices look fairly similar to this office, with all of its sort of swagger and style. And our customers tend to be the jeans and silly beard consumer, and that's why I dress the way I am, and also why I founded the company to be that way. We've been in business about 13 years, and we haven't looked back and continue to go and grow. And it's a great market to be in, to focus on a particular industry instead of any particular technology.
Great, Tom. Thanks for making it today. So I'm Deepak Lalwani. I'm a management and technology consultant that specializes in change and transformation. I have my own boutique consultancy. I've been in business since April 2014. I've been in this line of work for about 15 years. I cut my teeth at Accenture as a management and technology consultant there. Worked at a mid-sized consultancy servicing financial services and insurance. And then most recently, before going independent, worked at a cloud-based technology consultancy.
Okay.
So, with that said, let's get started with the questions.
Sure.
What are the most important decisions you make as a leader of your organization?
I think that the decisions that I have to make as a leader are really around, are my direct reports doing what they're supposed to be doing? And if the answer is yes, then carry on. And if the answer is no, the decision is, how can I best support them to actually deliver on what their job description requires and what their role requires. And then ultimately that dreaded decision of, if they can't be brought to task, like figuring out how to gracefully restructure and replace. That's a really big component. That's internal operational decision.
Yeah, okay.
I would say that the external operational decision is really based around the new business aspect of, how do I want to grow my business? What type of customers do I want to bring in? And really critically evaluating new customers. I tend to treat any new business opportunity as much me interviewing them as them interviewing us. Because I want to make sure that the customers that join our firm and are getting supported by my team are going to culturally adapt to us. They're going to culturally fit. And I have to be selective. I can't just take all comers.
Yeah, that's interesting. So outside of managing your employees and bringing out the best in them, it sounds like you're careful about customer selection, even though customers bring in revenue.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, why is that? Like, why? I mean, if it's not just about the money, what is it about a particular customer that?
Well, if I wanted to make money, if money was the motivator, I could have stayed as an employee at ad agencies. I could have stayed in the IT world as a direct employee. I was an IT director at an ad agency, studio support in that world, and played in the Fortune 500 space as a resource. Played politics, dealt with the 5,000 strong organization where I was just another face at Beer Wednesday. I could have kept doing that. I didn't want to do that, and what really motivated me was the opportunity to build something on my own, to build my own practice, to build my own business, something that I could stick my stamp on and say, I made that. It wasn't about the money. So when customers bring in revenue, absolutely. When we were a younger company, I wasn't as selective. I didn't have the privilege. When I was a younger company, we took everybody. So any lawyer that had money to spend with us, or accountant that wanted to have his computer de-virused, we were there, we would do our job. But over time, as we've continued to grow our practice, we have been refining our customer list to be really much more on mission for us in terms of what we want them to be. We force rank our customers as well as we force rank our employees. And customers that fall at the bottom 10% are in our target list to either be brought into our sort of upper echelons, or they're going to be slated for not renewing their contract.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. So you segment your customer base
based on their noise, their profitability, and then their cultural fit.
Right. So that relationship there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Which is most important to your organization? Vision, mission, or core values?
Well, they all so influence one another.
Sure.
I think that from your core values stems your mission, and from your vision is what sort of informs and creates your core values. I think that they're all very, very interrelated. I would say that we have our core values written on the wall. We call it the Tao of Valiant, and that's
Wow.
It's some fairly simple statements just as you're walking in, and we are curious, ever growing. That's really the first and foremost thing. I need everybody in my organization to be intellectually curious. They need to be interested in what makes the world tick and excited about the idea that there's an international space station flying overhead. Like, be excited about that. There's people living in space. How is that possible? And why are we not just like, oh, whatever? Like, no, we need to be excited about that. We need to be passionate about that.
Okay.
We need to do the right thing for our customers and do it now. It's about, not waiting for permission. I'd much rather people apologize for overstepping than ask permission to take a chance to do the right thing.
Right.
My staff, we are awesome. That's really, for us, is a really big part of it, is that we all have to believe that the company that we work for is awesome and that their coworkers are awesome. So when someone's yelling at them, it's a hell of a lot easier for them to take the blow, because they're just saying, you know what, you're just stressed. It doesn't affect me. I'm awesome. And I want to sort of create that.
So drive in. So do you find yourself looking for these values before you hire them, or is it something you kind of embed or push after you recruit them?
It's definitely first. The first
Okay.
interview that you get with Valiant is generally with me, and it's a cultural fit. I don't ask technical questions. I don't really look at technical certifications or degrees or the like. What I look at when I look at an applicant is I look at their cover letter. I look at the way that they express themselves.
Interesting.
I want to make sure that they are really reading the job application. I'll often put little honeypot questions in the job application to sort of make sure that they're reading it. So many people are just hitting apply,
Sure,
send the
right.
standard resume, send the standard cover letter. I want to make sure that that's not the case. So I'm looking for that. And when I interview, I ask questions of them that would challenge them, on that level. Once they pass that, then I'll let the tech guys, talk to them more about, have you ever deployed Exchange Server or anything like that? I don't really care about that, because I can teach people that. I have taught people that.
Right. Okay.
But I can't teach people humanity. I can't teach people work ethic. I can't teach them to have a sense of humor. I can't. That their mom was supposed to do that.
No, that's great. Do you set aside specific times to cast vision to your employees and other leaders? How much time do you spend deploying the vision to your employees?
Not nearly enough. There's definitely a fairly regular flow of that dialogue from us. It's not something where it's like, okay, everybody report to the conference room for your regular meeting of indoctrination.
Right.
That doesn't happen. They don't have to take their medicine and then pray at the altar.
Right.
It's much more. It's a persistent attitude that I endeavor to create among them through the emails that I send, the way that I explain to them. Just sort of like our general flexible culture. We have surveys. Everybody does survey results from tickets, when you get to a certain scale.
Sure.
And we had a streak going of 24 days where we didn't get one survey result below a 5, which is the highest score. So basically we got perfect scores for 24 days. We were excited.
So we're talking about customer surveys, customer satisfaction
for every
surveys.
ticket, and we do 200 or 300 tickets a day.
Oh, wow,
so,
that's great.
So I had told the guys, I said, if we get to 30 days, I'm going to do something awesome for you guys. It's going to be amazing. And one of the guys came into my office on day 25, and he was hanging his head, and he said, the 4 that we just got was mine. I wanted to tell you myself. And I was like, oh man, you broke the streak, you son of a bitch. And I printed and laminated one of those this company has gone such and such days without a sub 5 survey result, and I made him hang it up. I was like, here, you hang this laminated sign up.
Right.
And he was like, okay. But it's like, so how much time do I spend casting the vision? Definitely not nearly enough.
Okay.
But it is something that I'm definitely persistently working to express to them so that they know that I'm joking around, I'm encouraging them, I'm never going to let them think that it's ever too serious. We're not heart surgeons, we're not brain surgeons, we're not launching a rocket ship, it's computer support. As long as the data is backed up, it's really not that big of a deal. It's an inconvenience, but no one's going to die.
Right.
And also, my customers, we're in the creative space. They're
Sure.
a little bit more laid back, and the work that they do is, again, it's important, but it's not necessarily the end of the world if there's a 30-minute delay. Expensive, yes, but not necessarily someone's going to be, flatlining.
Yeah. We understand that you're working on opening a West Coast office. What are your top concerns about opening that office? I know that's a recent development over at Valiant.
Yeah, it is definitely a recent development, but it's been a long-term dream of mine to be bi-coastal, both because I've come to hate winter, but also because I think that it'll make our business a lot harder to kill in terms of our customers being bigger and being bi-coastal, or being able to pick up customers in this particular industry sphere of advertising, PR, fashion, production, TV and movie production, Hollywood, right?
Sure. So new clientele or
exactly.
new vertical, new industries?
Absolutely. My biggest concern in that space is the same concern that anyone that's ever explored looking into opening a secondary office. The thing that you read is that many businesses don't survive the opening of a second location because that second location parasites the focus of the owners and the resources from the host company, the original company.
I see.
And if you don't set limits on when you can sort of tap out and call it a day and say we failed at this, you may well end up killing the host. And that's something that I've always been very nervous about.
Yeah, I definitely understand the analogy, but what about that could be an opportunity for like leadership development or having someone step in those shoes to build that West Coast office. Any thoughts there?
It's definitely, the leadership that I'd like to see in the West Coast office I'd like it to be me. But again, just because I hate winter.
So a permanent move.
Yeah, but I'm a husband. I've got 3 kids. We're quite happy in Long Beach where we live right now, and the idea of uprooting and moving to San Diego during, drought and traffic and all of the madness that exists over there has definitely not been something I want to do. So, could I develop somebody in my organization and send them out there? Absolutely. Could I do an acquisition of a smaller complementary service provider out there? Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's definitely some room for those areas, and they're all part and parcel of why I haven't quite pulled the trigger, because I am exploring all of those options.
Right.
There's just so many different variables. There is a point at which you do suffer from analysis paralysis, and I don't want that to set in.
Right. So no hard decision has been made just yet.
No, I don't have a date. I don't have a deadline because it's my company. Any deadlines are artificially placed. There isn't any necessarily specific reason that I have to do it by any particular time. So I'll take my time with it and
Sure.
not allow it to get in the way of continuing to grow and build an excellent business
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and no concerns about feet on the street in terms of customers there at the moment.
No, we have some great partners that are out there that we work with.
Okay.
But we are handing that revenue away, and there is some there
Okay.
is some lack of control in terms
Sure.
of they may have a different vision. There's that joke that in the world of collective nouns, they say that a group of lions is called a pride, and a group of cows or whales is called a pod, and a
Okay.
group of engineers is called a disagreement.
Okay.
We always argue, we never disagree,
funny.
we never have the unified, I think this is best, well, I think you're a moron and that's the best.
Right.
So when I work with those partners on the West Coast, there's always that sort of like, oh, you guys like that tool, right? Yeah, I've been bad-mouthing that for 8 months. Okay. That sort of thing.
So just different ways of looking at things, even though they're partners.
Yeah.
What's one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
Decisiveness.
Really?
Absolutely.
Did everyone hear that? Decisiveness?
and such that I didn't spend time thinking about that answer, because even though that may not be the right answer, it's okay. You can always change your mind.
That's right.
The general pattern, a good plan executed violently today is better than the perfect plan executed next week. I'd much rather make the decision and move on. I don't have time, and this is so counter to what I was just saying about California, but their decisiveness coupled with a sense of understanding, your limitations, I think is going to be important. But when it comes to hiring and firing, when it comes to bringing on a customer, when it comes to investing in a platform or buying a tool or whatever, I need to look at it, I need to be presented with the facts, and I need to make a decision. I don't want to spend 6 weeks thinking about it. I can't, because my inbox will continue to fill up.
That's right. Yeah, and it sounds like, look, it's decisiveness on top of experience, right? Mm-hmm. It's not decisiveness who's someone new in the game.
No.
At least that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm also not afraid to be wrong. Being wrong doesn't mean that I'm dumb, and it doesn't mean anything negative to my ego. I admit that I'm wrong all the time. I find it so fascinating when you watch those TV debates and all those news shows where you see people with two opposing viewpoints. You've never seen anybody on those conversations ever go, "Oh, you made a good point.
Yeah.
You've changed my mind." That's never happened.
No, you're right.
But in conversations with me, I'll have dialogues with my friends and peers, and I'll often say, "You totally changed my mind. I really appreciate that. You brought that to my attention." I consider myself to have a certain open-mindedness.
Right.
I'll make a decision, and then if later it proves to be wrong, we'll fix it.
Yeah. No, love it. Love your attitude around that. That's great. What is one challenge you witness your managers face more frequently than others?
A challenge that they face more frequently. That's a good question. I would say that it depends on the manager. Different team leads have different challenges. My proactive team leader, his job is to get his team of 5 guys to prevent my customers from picking up the phone with broken things. And oftentimes the cure for what ails them is new equipment. So his position is always encourage them to get new equipment, encourage them to get a new server, encourage them to replace that old firewall, get them to get that thing out of here.
Right.
Because that's his mandate, that's his metric for success.
Sure.
The account management team, their job is to get those customers to make those purchases. But oftentimes the customers have a hard time seeing the value proposition, or just don't want to spend the money. And so I would say that the challenge between those two, the conflict there, is that one guy's measured on how infrequently customers are dialing to say it's broken again.
Right.
But the other guy is measured on customer satisfaction as a whole.
Sure.
And if he's too hard pushing on that, then the customers sort of start feeling like they're getting sold to. They start feeling like they're getting pressured in a way that they don't like.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a conflict there.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm hearing is like different managers bring different characteristics to the game, and that's something that...
Oh, absolutely. And oftentimes their mandates may stand in conflict with one another.
Interesting.
And I, as the leader of the organization, have to sort of come in and say, well, no, it's going to be this way this time.
Sure.
And next time I'll make sure that you get the shiny copper penny. And no, he's going to win this argument. And no, that he's going to win that argument.
Right.
And, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's my name on the door. So I've got to be the one that makes that call and inherits the responsibility for that, my decision. On it.
So, and I also understand that you've had some leadership turnover. What have you learned from that experience or process?
I would say choose your partners wisely.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Generally speaking, I've read a lot of leadership and management books, and many of them say the only partner you should ever have is your wife or your husband.
Really?
But I would disagree with that, in that I don't think I'd be sitting here today if it wasn't for my business partners.
Okay.
Even the partner that we ended up parting ways with. I mean, he's still running a different business and all that. It's an expensive conflict. It's an expensive divorce. But thankfully it went as well as it did, and the business has never been better.
Yeah.
Lessons learned though are really choosing your partners wisely and making sure that everybody's motivations are aligned, I think is critical. What do you want to be when you grow up? It needs to be sort of similar to what I want to be when I grow up, or at least complementary.
Sure.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, choosing your partners wisely. I mean, that's a great key takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
Two-part question. Can you explain the impact, if any, that online marketing and social networking has made on your organization? And if so, what are your current efforts along these lines?
It's a great question. I have for the last year been working with a content marketing / SEO organization,
Okay.
and it has been incredibly educational. I have learned a lot. Our Facebook likes have gone up and our Twitter followers have gone up, but that doesn't translate to the phone ringing off the hook.
Okay. No conversion to sales.
There's been very little conversion to sales. I should say, to be realistic, there's been no conversion to sales in that space.
We got to have a broader conversation about that, because I'm getting a lot of likes on some of the thought leadership I'm putting out there in terms of my writing and my guest speaking. But
But they're not
no
picking up the
conversion
phone.
to sales, right?
I mean, partly there has to be a direct call to action, and it's hard to hire a consultant with a click. You wouldn't just. I mean, somebody wouldn't see some article that you wrote necessarily and say, "I gotta have you," because your product itself, if it isn't necessarily packaged in a click here for your $69 a month relationship with me or whatever it might be, there's an obstacle, because they've got to have a conversation, they've got to delay, so the impulse buy factor isn't there.
Right, that's right.
But also when it comes to technology, I think that there is a sense of it being almost shameful when there's technology pain. I equate it often to erectile dysfunction. People have it, they don't talk about it.
Okay.
And they don't talk to their friends and neighbors about how their server doesn't have enough room or their computer doesn't have enough RAM, because it's that same sort of thing of like, thinking about that Viagra. Like, they just don't talk about it.
Right.
Ask anybody how business is going, and they always say, it's going great. Does anybody ever say, how's your server?
Yeah.
How's your printer? Is it nice? The color's really balanced? Like, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So when it comes to the social media aspects and the like, it's just people that read tech guys' social media stuff are other tech guys, and they're not my customer. So I have to make sure that I write my articles and write my blog content really targeted towards a non-technical market.
Interesting. Or your customer, or your client, or your potential client.
Right.
Now, and that's a good segue to the marketing outside of social media. Are you doing any targeted marketing to kind of drive or enable conversion to sales?
No, my customers are, they're incredibly cynical at any and all direct mail, email, video campaigns, and all the like. They are the manufacturers of them. My customers are advertisers, they're PR people, they are the hub of that world, so they're inoculated against the success. What's worked really well is good old-fashioned inside sales. I have one guy that sits and dials the phone all day and simply just says, can I talk to the folks in charge of IT? Oh, well, no, we outsource. Oh, how's that relationship? Are you guys happy with them? Oh, we've been with them a long time. It's great. Okay, no problem. If you ever need a second opinion on that sort of thing, you're in our target market. We're the only IT company in the city that really focuses on your specific industry.
Sure.
So we're out here, and I know the president of our company would love to pay you a visit. And it's successful.
Right.
I get 4 meetings a week out of that relationship.
That's great.
And I don't need to send postcards or, write video blogs for them. It's just they don't care.
So we talked about social media marketing. We've also talked about kind of asynchronous marketing, but what about relationship type marketing? Is that driving sales?
Explain what you mean.
So just more referral based, handshaking.
Absolutely.
The meetings that you have.
Yeah, referrals are a huge source for a couple of reasons. One, because, again, we're awesome. So we do a good job. So our customers will sing our praises and tell their friends. As much as, again, there is a hint that someone will ever say in conversation that they've got that, metaphorical erectile dysfunction. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, we do get the recommendation.
Okay.
The other factor for us is that there's a very high turnover rate in our customer network.
Okay.
Customers will often jump from one company to another. It's an incestuous and aggressive business in that front. People stay there for a year, 18 months. And when they go to their new company and their new computer isn't waiting and shiny and new, and the mouse pad isn't clean, and the email isn't set up, and the signature isn't right, they say, man, these IT guys suck. You should call the guys that supported my old company. Those Valiant guys, they really know what they're doing. And we have all too often gotten simultaneous emails from 2 different customers. One that says, user termination, Bob Farkas, and the other one says new employee Bob Farkas.
Yeah.
So we'll have the same engineer go collect the computer from Bob, and then that guy will show up on Monday with his new computer and be like, just to
Right.
sort of blow their mind, because it's like when you are industry vertical focused, that can happen, and those are really great moments when those happen, because that's really like a consistency of impression, and it gives them like this sense of like, good, it's you guys, I can trust you.
That's great. Let's see. What are after years of focus on delivering value to the business, why is IT largely still viewed as a cost center?
That's a good question. I would say that comprehension is a factor.
Okay. Yes. Say more about that.
Well, I think a lot of people at the boardroom level, the older generation particularly, right now still have a lack of understanding of computers. In the architecture space, for example, a lot of the older architects, they miss the days of being able to sit at a drawing board and actually do it with a pencil, because it was a bygone era and it was sort of magical. And now that everything's on screen, it loses a little bit of its romance, and it's no longer as intimate as it might have been. So they consider technology to sort of be this sort of like this cold thing. And they don't get it. I think that the younger generation takes technology for granted to some degree also. They've sort of grown up in the era of computers. They've always had an email address, and they've always had a smartphone and all that. So that's another factor of like, I have to pay for tech support? Is a factor too. But I think that businesses that are successful are ones that really prioritize IT, and in fact don't treat IT as an ancillary component of the business, but actually core to the business. I had a client once tell me that he's a furniture manufacturer. He said, I am not a furniture manufacturer. I am in the customer service business. I happen to make chairs. And that to me was just so instrumental.
Yeah.
And I think that the customers of mine that have been most successful are the ones that say that we are in the technology business. We just happen to use our technology to make advertisements, to make great clothes, to do all that. Like technology, it's not a department. It's not separate.
Right.
It is the company, because it's electricity. Nobody's in the electricity business, but we don't necessarily begrudge Con Edison their bill. And it should function like electricity. You should hit the light switch and it should work. You shouldn't have to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful. Now we're talking about technology, whether a cost center or a revenue driver, we're talking about it as a utility, like as a need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's core. And the businesses that succeed are the ones that recognize that technology is really there to accelerate human potential.
Interesting.
That's really what it does. It's one man can do the work of 20, one man can do the work of 100. There was a time when cars were manufactured by thousands of people on a factory floor that made it happen.
That's right.
And now it's a couple of guys that are servicing the robots that are making those cars.
That's right.
It's not necessarily a good thing for the people that are being put out of work, but for the company as a whole, it absolutely is a good thing in terms of their margins and their reliability and their sort of ability to, putting out good products.
Quality.
My minivan has 120,000 miles on it and has never broken down.
That's
ever.
Great. That's
My
great.
father never had a car that would go more than a weekend without having something fall off of it back in the 80s. It's just how it was.
Absolutely. In your experience, how do you think IT can do a better job of making its top management aware of how it's adding value?
I think by getting some of those IT people's faces out of those tech magazines and the tech community and the like, I think that technology people need to recognize that what I was just saying about technology being core to the business is a two-way street. IT guys also have to treat technology not as a separate entity, but rather as a component of the business. Get a deep understanding of what your customers actually do, what your company does. If you're an in-house technologist at whatever company, you need to understand your company. You need to understand those people. You need to understand what makes them tick and what motivates them, because then you'll have a much more natural cultural fit, and they'll start to recognize that you're not that weirdo gremlin in the basement. You know? You take that away, and you become a better salesman for yourself and for what you do, and for how you position, and for that, I think that'll really help.
Yeah, so I mean, understanding the business is what I'm hearing, as opposed to just being a tech professional.
Absolutely, yeah, and understanding the business and also understanding how to communicate,
Okay.
write, speak, do something.
Right.
Have a sense of humor, loosen up a little bit.
Okay, so having interpersonal skills is also.
I think that's kind of huge, and it's
Okay.
often sorely lacking. The stereotype of the socially awkward, pimply-faced computer guy, it exists for a reason. And that
right.
was the standard for a long time.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily have to continue being anything other
Right.
than, the image of a cowboy,
Right.
is to what managing cattle is today.
Because, yeah, and our tagline, because every business is a technology business.
It's very, very true.
Yeah, it's a utility. All right, last question before we go to the audience. It's my understanding that 23 and 2014 were your best performing years. Knowing that, were there any investments tied to your business goals in those years? What did you do different?
Focused on sales and sales pipeline as a concept was definitely not something that we had ever focused on. We'd always sort of grown organically through just pure play word of mouth, which is, by the way, that's code for waiting for customers to find you. And it's not really necessarily a good growth strategy.
Okay.
I think that actually saying we want to grow this much, we want to add this much revenue, has been a really great motivator, because once you set a goal, you can build the breadcrumb trail backwards to where you are today to understand what's required to get to that goal. Again, I have never actually hit any one of my goals. I've always gotten within 10%, which I think is appropriate, because that always sort of makes sure that my reach exceeds my grasp and motivates me to get up in the morning.
Sure.
I think there's in a lot of ways nothing worse than hitting your goal too early in the year, because then you're kind of like, now what do I do?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like very much of a stretch goal, right?
Right.
But
yeah.
it sounds like you set some good targets. You're hitting your goals from a performance management or business performance perspective. You said also a focus on sales.
Yeah, and when I say focus on sales, in that what I did is we hired some additional resources to take non-sales work away from me. My work used to involve everything from office management to a little bit of bookkeeping to a little bit of HR to a little bit of service management to sales to quoting to all of this sort of stuff. We just basically we looked at the E-Myth, your entrepreneur myth. You're familiar with that book?
Sure.
That old org chart that we had once wrote when we were a 3-person company, where my name was on most of the bubbles and my partner's names were on a couple of the bubbles. We brought that out and updated it and said, okay, well, he's doing this job now and he's doing that job, but I'm still doing this job, that job, that job, and that job. And as long as I'm doing that, this sales job is not going to get the focus that it needs. So we hired some additional people, promoted some additional people to have them tackle those jobs that had nothing to do with what we really considered our most important role for me, which is sales.
Sure.
And that really was the investment that we made. Our investment was in our people.
Yeah. No, great. With that said, let's open up questions to the audience. So any questions for Tom?
I would say making sure that those long-term goals, those late-night, starry-eyed conversations, that your stories are aligned. What you want to be when you grow up, what you want your weekends to look like, what motivates you. If what motivates you is a Ferrari and a boat, and what motivates me is just a really huge organization with, not necessarily as much profit, but a hell of a lot more people and a bigger culture and all that, well, we might not necessarily be in alignment. You might be looking to squeeze every penny out of the business, and I may be looking to plow it back into the business because I want a bigger company. That may not be aligned. When a partner is looking at the business as more of a lifestyle, like, I can't wait to set this business up so I don't have to come in anymore. Those casual, offhanded phrases that people might utter under their breath or when they're dreaming and talking, I think that those are the moments that you really should listen, the unguarded moments. When you ask the question of somebody directly, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're going to give you something of a formalized answer, like a job interview. But when you're in your 4th cocktail, I think that's when in vino veritas, you'll start to really hear the truth if you know what you're listening for. I'm not advocating, aggressive alcoholism as a cure for what ails you, but I will say it's worked well for me.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom
Thanks so
Clancy,
much.
President of Valiant Technology.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pleasure.
Thanks for being here.